Alrighty. So what was the major narrative that we were told, like, repeatedly from conservatives, especially far-right conservative news outlets, when the election was happening between Trump and Biden? Election fraud, right? Like, that's the thing that we were told, like, repeatedly, is that, oh my god, it's election fraud. Recount, please, do a recount. And then they did recounts in places. In Georgia, recounted, 3 separate times? And kept on coming to the same conclusion. Joe Biden won. Fuck off. Your dude lost. He's going to have to be Orange Man bad somewhere else. Okay. And it got really exhausting. Well, I hate to tell you guys that we're going to be doing this all over again. All over again. And it's happening in California. Before that, let's get into the fan art section. So this one is from Glovenex. So just a sketch for now. They wanted to do an interpretation of the maid outfit, close to the original male outfit with the chains and whatnot. And it is currently a work in progress. Honestly, having like almost a not a BDSM maid outfit, but the maid outfit with like the traditional chains and stuff that my avatar used to have all the time. That'd be cool. I think that'd be neat. Next, we have this one from Niene. They did a Sonic Adventure style Suris, which makes me wonder whether or not they watched the Chow Mix video on how to do Sonic Adventure style artwork. But I love this. This is wonderful. The freaking this is gonna be cursed now that I say this, but like literally all the freaking Sonic the Hedgehog fan art you guys want to throw in, I'm all for it. Again, I'm gonna regret that thing that I just said, that now that those words have come out of my mouth, the weird parts of that community are going to ruin everything that I love and hold dear, and there's not going to be any way I can avoid it. But as always, thank you all for your fan art submissions, and let's go ahead and get into the article specifically. So it's actually a couple articles here. First one's from the Daily Beast, and then we have another one we're going to read from MSNBC. But this one is about Tommy Lauren. Apparently, she claims that the only thing that will save Newsom in freaking California is voter fraud, because it's always voter fraud. This is going to be the thing. This is going to be the thing that conservatives die on now, right? Like, if it's not cum-guzzling horse paste, it's not being able to do simple fucking math and read numbers. But let's look at the clip.
Well, we've seen this time and time again from Kamala. When there's an issue that she can't win on, she just stays silent on it, or she refuses to go, as we saw with the border, and we continue to see with the border. But going back to Gavin Newsom and the recall effort, you know, this is a level of tone deaf that we haven't seen since the early days of American Idol auditions. The fact that we've got so many things going wrong in this country, the fact that we've got a Delta variant and whatever variant we're on now, the fact that we've got what's going on our border, the fact that we've got what's going on in Afghanistan, the gas prices, the inflation, all of this mess, and Kamala thinks, I know what I'll do. I'll go to California to campaign for Gavin Newsom. I mean, it's stunning, really. How
Wait. You think it's tone deaf that a Democrat would go to a largely democratically controlled state and would campaign for more Democrat control in those areas? That surprises you. That's the tone deaf thing. I have a question. What's Kamala supposed to do about the troops that have been pulled out of Afghanistan? What's Kamala supposed to do about that? What's Kamala supposed to do about the Delta variant? Do you want her to put like a Superwoman symbol on her chest and just go rush in and just laser eye the Delta variant away? Is that functionally, what is she supposed to do? Like, regardless of your opinion on Kamala Harris, and I've pointed out my issues with her, especially the issues with her and our fucking prison system. Like, I've done those in other videos. But what the fuck is she supposed to do about those things? Like, how is it tone deaf to go to a political campaign with all that other stuff happening? All that other stuff's happening regardless of what she does.
how much they think that they can get away with. But Charlie's absolutely right. They believe that the American people are stupid. They believe that the American people sit on Instagram and TikTok all day.
I hate to tell you this, Miss Fox News host who makes very questionable tweets all the fucking time. This is projection?
And aren't paying attention to gas prices, aren't paying attention to food shortages, worker shortages, aren't paying attention to any of the other dumpster fires going on in this country. But I will say this, to Charlie's point, yes, Gavin Newsom has raised a whole lot of money from teachers' unions and special interests and tech, but that money is not going to save him. The only thing that will save Gavin Newsom is voter fraud. So as they say, stay woke, pay attention to the voter fraud going on in California, because it's going to have big consequences not only for that state.
Every time. It's gonna be this every time. It's gonna just keep being this. It's gonna keep being this. Over and over again. Every single time that a Republican loses in a state, there's gonna be somebody on Fox News bitching that it's voter fraud. Now, despite the fact that Democrats have controlled California for God knows how long, it's suddenly now magically gonna be voter fraud. It has to be, right? I need a concrete wall. And I need to turn that concrete wall to powder solely and exclusively with the power of my forehead and my pain.
But for upcoming elections, every bad idea originates in California, and that just happens to be where Kamala's from. No coincidence there.
Look at that burn. Isn't it funny that Fox News isn't actually considered news? They're a news-centered entertainment industry. Feels to me that this is exactly what that is. This is like the WWE of newscasting. You know, when you're a kid, you think that it's real, and then you hear the things that they're saying, and you realize after a while that it's actually just narrative shit-talking.
Yeah, and Kamala, Julie, it's not just Afghan women she's been silent on. What about the border? These kids in deplorable emergency intake facilities, these illegal immigrant children. She never speaks on that. Cuomo, virtually every Democrat spoke out against Cuomo, but Kamala was woefully silent. You'd think the first woman VP would speak out on some of these very key issues.
Yeah, this has all proven one thing to me, that the only reason that they had Kamala Harris as the VP on the ticket was to use her for being the first female vice president.
Okay, most likely true. Like, I'm going to be perfectly honest. There is no part in my mind that is deluded into thinking that the reason that we have Kamala as a vice president is because she was positioned in such a way that she would be the first female vice president, and would specifically be a female vice president who could be considered of color. There's no part in my mind that thinks that that was not a political maneuver. However, what the fuck does that have to do with whether or not she has spoken about every single individual issue in the United States? I just don't get it. And how much you want to bet? I don't follow her political career, to a T. How much you would have bet she has spoken out about some of these things and Fox is just pleasantly ignoring them? Not to mention, like, did Fox News bitch about Trump not talking about the woefully terrible conditions that children were being kept in the border? Or was that just a thing that they conveniently glazed over because Trump had a convenient red R next to his name in the White House? It baffles me. It's Fox News. It baffles me. But let's look at what the actual article has to say about it. Fox Nation host Tommy Lauren pushed forth a growing Fox narrative on Tuesday that California Governor Gavin Newsom will only survive the California recall by rigging the election, outright claiming that the only thing that will save him is voter fraud. Months after Donald Trump's big lie that the 2020 presidential election was stolen, it led to the January 6th Capitol insurrection, Republicans have continued to latch onto the baseless election conspiracies to not only justify Trump's loss, but now to preemptively explain away future GOP losses. With the California recall only a week away and the poll showing Newsom now enjoys a comfortable double-digit lead, Lauren insists on Tuesday broadcast of Outnumbered that the governor was actually in serious danger of losing. She says, yes, Gavin Newsom has raised a whole lot of money from teachers' unions, and said, we already watched the video, we know what she said. And then she went down the conspiracy theory rabbit hole. Conservative talk radio host Larry Elder, who is the top polling Republican candidate in the recall effort, has similarly suggested election fraud. And that will be what allows Newsom to prevail, pointing to voting machines and programs designed to help disabled voters as potential culprits. And these myths have been thoroughly debunked, which we already know. We did the whole fucking debunk of this shit ages ago. It's insane to me. We are still doing this. This is the thing they're going to latch on to for the next few election cycles. So I guess get used to hearing that. It's really agitating. I don't want to keep listening to them talk about how stuff was stolen from them when they're just not as popular. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at the MSNBC article real quick. As Newsom leads California recall polls, Larry Elder pushes baseless conspiracy theory fraud claims. Let's see what is said here.
For a moment here, because as was just mentioned there, that $3.5 trillion a safety net bill, Democrats are calling it a safety net bill, Joe Manchin officially drawing a line in the sand, it would seem, over the price tag. Take us through where things stand there.
Craig, House committees are working feverishly to mark up provisions of this bill. They started doing that last week. They're continuing into this week.
Okay, I'm not as concerned about that right now, mainly because that's not the topic we're on. So we're just going to continue here. Let's see here. Republicans in Tuesday's California gubernatorial recall election are already laying the groundwork to argue that the election was stolen, even before a single ballot is reported or a victor is declared, an increasingly common tactic in conservative circles. Republican Larry Elder appealed on Monday to his supporters to use an online form to report fraud, which claimed it had detected fraud in the results of the California recall election, resulting in Governor Gavin Newsom being reinstated as governor. Only one problem. We're just going to zoom in on this so you can read along with me. The only problem is that on Monday, when the link went live on Elder's campaign website, the election hadn't happened yet. No results had been released, and Elder was still campaigning to replace Newsom as governor. Now wait, hold on. Hold on. That seems kind of weird. That seems like not what is supposed to happen there. If he's appealing on Monday to his supporters to use an online form to report fraud, which he had claimed had already detected fraud in the results, but the results aren't in because you are still having to campaign, what does that tell us? And what is this here?
The president earlier today touring fire damage in Northern California, one of the many crises Governor Newsom's faced during his term, including COVID, the nation's worst economic inequality, and rising violent crime.
Do you really think that this is about a Republican recall and only that there aren't unhappy people in California unhappy with Governor Gavin Newsom?
Of course, everybody's upset with everybody in the last 18 months. No one's naive about that, but let's talk about who's behind this. It is a Republican recall. It's backed by the RNC.
Every voter in California will get a mail-in ballot and 2 questions to vote on. Shall Gavin Newsom be recalled from the office of governor? And who should replace him? Across the state, voters have been casting ballots for weeks, mostly by mail, as we saw at LA's processing center. We're talking about millions of ballots from this recall will be passing through this building because each and every California voter is getting a mail-in ballot. The leading GOP challenger, Larry Elder, has raised concerns about the election's integrity and today wouldn't commit to accepting the results.
Okay.
Whether or not you win or lose, will you accept the results of the election tomorrow?
I think we all ought to be looking at election integrity, no matter whether...
So no. So no. This is the same thing that happened with Trump. It's the same fucking thing. Centurial, thank you very much for redeeming your points for an ara. You fucking monster. How many times does this have to happen now? How many times do we have to have some Republican politician or would-be politician say that they're not going to accept the results of democracy because they smell something fishy? Like that. How many times? How many times is that going to happen now? I know that, you know, this news is a little late by the time that I am covering it, but it's just so confusing and so agitating because it doesn't matter whether Larry Elder concedes on this one point. It doesn't matter if he backs off from here. What matters is the constant repeating of the same bullshit claim. How many times do we have to have Republicans in office who are trying to undermine the efficacy of the democratic system, not insofar as there are Democrats running it, but insofar as it is a system that is trying to use democracy to keep a republic going? How many times do we have to just sit here and listen to them go, well, I'm not going to accept the results if they come in, and then fold later like little baby back bitches? How many times is this going to keep fucking happening?
You're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican.
Turnout in this election will be key. 23-year-old Long Beach resident Camilla switched from independent to Republican for the vote.
Do you get the sense that the governor understands how hard life is for you and people like you?
Oh, sorry. It's upsetting. It's really upsetting. I don't mean to get emotional, but he has no idea.
The race itself could hinge on struggling.
So likely he has no idea, but I'm just going to say this right now. Putting a Republican in office isn't going to fix that. If income inequality is your problem, historically Republicans don't fix that. If response to COVID is your issue, Republicans don't work there either right now. They have been woefully failing every single red state. Just no, you don't want more red right now.
Voters like Camilla who share that sentiment.
It sounds like you're going to vote to recall the governor.
I am.
Newsom understands that campaigning against what he sees as an undemocratic Republican recall may not be enough.
Inequality is worse in this state, in your state, than anywhere else in the United States of America. Do you blame people for wanting a change in leadership?
Well, I just got here 2.5 years ago.
But Democrats have been in power here for over 10 years.
Yeah, and for over 2 decades, we've led the nation in terms of some of those challenges.
So, Jacob, the president is joining the governor this evening for a final push. What's that going to look like?
Okay, so, again, it's just the same thing. And I guess we'll see what the next election ends up being, where another, Republican freaks the hell out about election results. And we'll see what happens there. But continuing on, statistical analysis used to detect fraud in elections held in third world nations such as Russia, Venezuela, and Iran have detected fraud in California, resulting in Governor Gavin Newsom being reinstated as governor. This site reads. Okay, well, what's the site? What are we looking at? StopCAFraud.com. Seems legit. I don't know what would possibly happen. I mean, I might be getting a Trojan on my computer right now looking at this fucking website. But who the fuck knows, right? The primary analytical tool used was Benford's Law, and it can be readily reproduced according to the site. The site added on Monday afternoon a disclaimer saying it was paid for by Larry Elder Ballot Measure Committee Recall Newsom Committee, with major funding from Elder's gubernatorial campaign. I'm flabbergasted. I'm absolutely flabbergasted. What kind of an unbiased website would be called Report Election Fraud, Stop California Fraud, and be funded primarily, almost exclusively, by one of the main frontrunners in the election who's currently getting pegged by numbers? I don't know, guys. Also, the fact that the site had to add that on Monday afternoon, So that wasn't part of the site initially? So during the first wave of people using the website, it didn't say where the money was coming from initially. Okay, cool. Why not? I expect nothing less at this point. The most recent polls show Newsom is likely to survive the attempt to remove him from office in the recall election, which we've already seen. He's got the office now. Elder and other Republicans have already started chalking up a potential loss to allegations of voter fraud, which is the exact same script that President Donald Trump used. Said this is really becoming the standard GOP playbook, said Lee Drutman, a senior fellow at New America think tank that studies democracy. So this is Democracy 101. If you don't have elections that are accepted as divisive, then you don't really have a democracy, because the alternative is violence or authoritarianism. There's been no evidence of voter fraud in California, but Elder's websites ask voters to submit affidavits of evidence they witnessed of voter fraud, targeting those who would support him after Election Day. And it was first reported by the Sacramento Bee. So, my question is this, and we're done reading the article. We've got basically the point of both of the articles that we've read. So now I'm going to throw it back to you. In every election that we have going forward, if there is this narrative that democracy isn't working, democracy isn't working, democracy isn't working, democracy is failing, there's voter fraud here, voter fraud there, your mom is probably voter fraud, Mickey Mouse has probably put voter fraud in the water. If that is constantly happening every time, what do you think the logical end result of that is? What do you think the logical end result of everybody losing their faith in democracy is? I would say that there's not a guaranteed end result there. There's not a guaranteed way of factoring in what's going to happen with, America. But if you are constantly feeding into this narrative, and the narrative is largely being fed by only one side, with one exception. There's one exception. For the longest time, there was a conversation about a Russian conspiracy to meddle with our election. Not necessarily that Donald Trump did not win by the numbers, but there was some type of messing with it. So, with the notable exception of that, if this is happening in almost in a bunch of higher profile elections, in places where we already expect the numbers to be in favor of the Democrats, if one side is constantly losing faith in democracy, I see one of two situations happening. Either the self-fulfilling prophecy happens, and several Republicans stop voting in various elections, which, they'll do so because they're jaded and they don't see democracy as working, so why vote anyway? And then, of course, we end up getting more and more blue states as a result of that, and then it feeds into the election conspiracy narrative. Oh, well, look at all these places turning blue now. How do you think this possibly happened? Must be that voter fraud we've been warning you all about, and then they get the self-fulfilling prophecy about the failures of democracy. Or, alternatively, everything continues as it is, with Democrats and Republicans voting at the same rate that they normally do. But we end up having more, say, January 6th type events. Not necessarily as violent, but certainly more protests, getting people angrier and angrier, and the public getting more and more frustrated at the standard goings-on of the country. I don't know. Those are the areas that my brain goes to. The civil unrest versus the self-fulfilling prophecy, with there being more blue states. And neither of them are good. While having more blue states is, better for keeping the country away from extremism, if you have more blue states and it ends up feeding into that narrative, think about how many Steven Crowders, Ben Shapiro's, think about how many Alex Joneses are going to whip up their people into a frenzy. At the end of the day, I don't know how it's going to happen. I don't know what's going to happen in the country. I'm not going to be a Tim Pool and sit here and tell you, oh my god, civil war is happening. My beanie has been suffocating the oxygen to my brain for the past 12 years, and I don't know when it's going to stop. I'm not going to be that person, because I think that that's a naive and clickbaity thing to be. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to do what I usually do. I'm going to throw it back to you guys. What do you see happening here? Do you see the GOP doing this playbook over and over again and thus instigating one of the two or potentially more scenarios that I just haven't considered? Or do you see them realizing that this doesn't work for them and abandoning the strategy completely? I don't know, but I want to know what you think. So, with that said, let me know, especially if you're in California and you were seeing a lot of this narrative shaping up firsthand. Let me know what your thoughts are. I want to know. With all that said, though, if you want to support my channel and what I do, you know how to do so. You can hit the like button if you want to. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And with all that said, though, insert edit video tagline here, and I really, really just want to get back to understanding that my country functions. That'd be great. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. It really means a lot to me. If you want access to behind-the-scenes content for the channel, please consider checking out my Patreon. I do weekly vlogs over there, where I give real-life updates to what's going on behind the scenes on the channel, stuff that you don't really get over here, and even on Twitch. Patreon also helps the channel's stability a whole lot. Without Patreon, I wouldn't be able to do this at all. Especially with the kind of content that I do, neither YouTube nor Twitch are the most stable sources of income. If you are a $20 and up patron, then you will be featured on the ending slides as shown in the beginning of the end credits. If you want to catch the streams where all this content comes from, then consider heading over to Twitch and following. And if you want to continue watching over here on YouTube, maybe consider clicking one of the end screen videos. And once again, I want to thank you so much for spending your time with me over on my channel. I wouldn't be able to do literally anything that I'm doing over here on YouTube without each and every one of you. So, thank you.